It's also my favorite. In the beginning, there was the Word. The Word was in God's presence, and the Word was God. The Word was present to God from the beginning. Through the Word, all things came into being, and apart from the Word, nothing came into being that has come into being. In the Word was life, and that life was humanity's light, a light that shines in the darkness, a light that the darkness has never overtaken. Then came one named John, sent as an envoy from God, who came as a witness to testify about the light, so that through his testimony everyone might believe. He himself wasn't the light, he only came to testify about the light, the true light that illumines all humankind. The Word was coming into the world, was in the world, and though the world was made through the world didn't recognize it. Though the Word came to its own realm, the Word's own people didn't accept it. Yet any who did accept the Word, who believed in that name, were empowered to become children of God, children born not of natural descent, nor urge of flesh, nor human will, but born of God. And the Word became flesh and stayed for a little while among us. We saw the Word's glory, the favor and position a parent gives an only child, filled with grace, filled with truth. John testified by proclaiming, "This is the one I was talking about when I said, 'The one who comes after me ranks ahead of me, for this one existed before I did.'" Of this one's fullness, we've all had a share, gift upon gift. For while the law was given through Moses, the gift and the truth came through Jesus Christ. No one has ever seen God. It is the only begotten ever at God's side who has revealed God to us. Ancient words for our consideration.
Hello. Thank you all for being here. When I started this series, I wasn't sure how empty the place was going to be towards the end, so I appreciate people struggling through this. When I was young, and then when I went through seminary and after seminary, it always felt like the Bible was describing a different world than the one I lived in. The religious world that I was taught did not look like my day-to-day life, and for a long time I thought I was supposed to pretend that all of these things were illuminating my life, were helping me make my decisions. But there was some part of me that wondered why I didn't get any angels. Right? You tell the Christmas story, and there's angels all over the place. I wasn't asking a lot, just maybe one angel. Could call, something like that, send a letter. My cough is back. So, the animals talk in the Bible, some of them. People walk on water. I just haven't had a lot of experience with that. And what I decided in terms of my life, and you certainly do not have to agree with this, is that I wanted religion to work in my ordinary life. What I discovered was the more magical my religion became, the more meaningless my everyday life became as a result. That if I couldn't find the sacred in the ordinary every day, that even if I believed in incredibly magical, wonderful things, I wasn't going to be spending a lot of time there. So I believe when we look at John, we have a real mirror into the early church, in that there would be no reason for this prologue at the 1st of John if he was then writing a history book. Right? It's a real strange poem coming from, you see the Greek philosophy, you see some Hebrew, but universal Hebrew kind of thing. I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, and it's really important. When you read John, first of all, realize you're looking through a man's eyes. So you have to counterbalance that. The roles of the sacred tend to be expressed in masculine terms. There are women there, but they're not equal. Part of that is when you speak Greek. If you were a lifelong Jewish wisdom person, then wisdom would be female, would be Sophia. But if you're speaking Greek, it's a male word. And so you have all kinds of really strange things that Jesus talks about the bosom. Like there's just not a whole lot of point in going to a man's bosom. Right? When the religion has its feminist roots, then yeah, nurture, love, all of those kinds of things. Also, he has a problem with Jewish people. If you just take the story at face value, it's not really fair at all to the Jewish people. And it may be they were traumatized afterwards, but we don't have an excuse, particularly with the United States being the way it is right now, not to condemn, even in Scripture, when we see something that's anti-Semitic. So I believe that these ancient texts were experiences that people had of a mystical experience of their depth. You don't have to believe in God to have that experience. Of the tie that binds us to everything. Of that sense of being addressed by life. I feel those mystical experiences that all of us have were kind of copyrighted by the church. It said if you have these official experiences, then that's going to work. Now, for me, I faked it for a while, but at some point you want to live your life. And you want to see what is the best way that I can give my gift to the world. So I believe when you see these stories of Jesus, they're put in human terms, but they're talking about cosmic truths. And not just like cosmic in some abstract way, but the living truths of who we are. When we go deeper into ourselves, we're connected to the web of life. And when people don't know that, then of course they value other things more than the earth. But if they knew the connections that they have with all living beings, they would realize the earth is more valuable than anything you're trading it for. You would realize that whatever this word is that's being talked about has got to be universal. The church has no copyright on the word. And in this story, it's there at the very beginning. So when we look at John, it's important to realize he's not using parables in the same way. The other three Gospels, Jesus talks in parables. In John, everything's a parable, in my opinion. He's not trying to do history, biography. It's trying to awaken us to who we are as children of God. You don't believe in God, children of the cosmos. So we're trying to use Escher to get a kind of sense of what the parables were intending to do. And I'm actually remembering the slides. There was one I ran across, a slide I ran across sometime back, and I can't find it anymore. I'm remembering it as a grasshopper on a helix, like the DNA helix. I can't find it, so it's maybe something besides a grasshopper. These are ants on a Moebius strip, which is not quite as good, except for the word made flesh means that we are all expressions of some deep kind of mathematical matrix to use life of unfairness and some pain with love and beauty, I think most of us would choose that in a heartbeat. But that's saying that the people that say yes to this word are empowered to be the sons and daughters, children of God. There's not a really good English word for it. I say offspring. It wasn't just Jesus, right? And when the church makes it all about Jesus, then we're missing the point of this prologue. You wouldn't need the prologue if it was literally true. You wouldn't need parables if they were talking about a literal truth. The purpose of a parable is to help us see something that we're not aware of, to feel it, to hear it. And these paradoxes are trying to help us realize it's not that dark is bad and light is good, but to realize there is a kind of light shining in your worst darkness. There's kind of a song in the most silent moment. There's a bond that you're experiencing, even your loneliest, most isolated feelings. I think John is trying to help us go deeper and feel our connections to the whole world. In a few minutes, we're going to sing the song, What Child Is This? What child is this who laid to rest? And if you've always thought of that as just Jesus, baby Jesus is great, no criticism here. But what if it's about something being born in you and me? What if there's something sacred where Jesus doesn't want you to sit in the bleachers and watch him do all of these things? That Jesus wants you to feel the same depth and love and wisdom that he lived his whole life. Buddha wanted that, but so they spoke in parables and riddles, so we wouldn't get lost in the literal, but we did. We have. So one of the verses we're going to sing together is the question. What child is this? It goes, why lies he in such lies or lays? Why lies he in such mean estate, where ox and ass are feeding? So you have this idea of this great cosmic ruler who's in a cattle trough. The word made flesh, an infant can't speak. And yet somehow an infant touches us and brings something out of us that nothing else can. So it says, good Christian, fear, for sinners hear, the silent word is pleading. David's going to clean up the language there, but that idea that the pattern within you, that's the cosmic pattern, it's almost like it's trying to call you home. That when you see the pattern and feel it, that's beauty. When you just look and think about it, that's reason. When it moves you to love in a way that becomes justice for all people, that's when it blossoms even further. It talks about being a light to the whole world. That is not sectarian Christianity. Sectarian Christianity is not a light to the whole world. Right? If you're not Christian, then it's not. But this pattern, the pattern that's there deeper in us than we are in ourselves, I think John is calling us to that. The last thing I want to point out that John says is, he says, no one has ever seen God. Now that's kind of a strange thing to say. No one has ever seen God. How could you see the transcendent? But you may have had an experience that gave you images and feelings, and those are important, but they're bridges. You can't see it, taste it, feel it. You can't see it because it's that by which you see. You can't hear it because it's that by which you're hearing. So when the other gospel writers tell parables, when John puts this elaborate poem together, it's all to help us feel our roots. And you don't have to make this very strange. John wanted people to know the body's not bad. That's a lot of what he's trying to do, which is in his resurrection story, Jesus comes around and he's hungry for fish. What a ridiculous detail, except for it's saying that the spirit and the body are not separate. Light and dark are not separate. In this kind of cosmic poetry, the dark is the root of the light. It's like the candle out of which the flame burns. And to realize that it's born out of us. You won't find truth, goodness, beauty already there in the world. You have been sent to give birth to it. I mean, that's a poetic way of saying it. The word apostle means to be sent. You're coming from the ground of things. And the patterns in your body, remember that and recognize it in other people. What a gift it is when you can see that in the ordinary moments. And even in the problems of the world. I love Bishop Romero, and I'm getting close to wrapping up. So, Bishop Romero, we must not seek the child Jesus in the pretty figures of our Christmas cribs. We must seek him among the undernourished children who have gone to bed at night with nothing to eat, among the poor, the newsboys who will sleep covered with newspapers in doorways. He was speaking to a suffering nation. We also see it in the joyful, in the happy, in every person, animal, plant, that we are part of a frenzied symphony. If we realize that the word, if we learn how to see that which doesn't, a light that you can't see, it's coming out of the darkness, but it's there for you. A song that you can't hear, even though you know that life has this kind of beautiful harmony to it. So when we look at the Bible, if we look at it in the traditional form, I don't blame anybody for leaving the church. People in Europe have left in droves. If you look at the polls, it's in the United States, it is. But it doesn't have to be that way. If it'll lead people deeper into who they are, if they could feel their connection to other people. So this Christmas, as we tell the stories, to realize Christmas isn't just something that happened a long time back and far away. Christmas happens every time we see the pattern in things, in the middle of our chaos, in all of the mess, where we stop and see the beauty of things. That Christmas happens when we realize that we are that word that's made manifest in flesh. We're here on a mission, speaking poetically. And then finally to realize that when we love, even though nobody's ever seen God, when we love, we become the face of God for one another. And every one of us then becomes a light for the world. Well, that's my understanding of this text. I invite you now to a moment of reflection on your own.